So coming up this week is going to be week number 7 of the Contender Series, and I can't really believe that we are already at week number 7. It's gone quickly, and it's been good, because I feel like this season has been quite good. Now, I feel like my picks have been pretty good as well. I mean, last year my picks were not so great, and this year I've really turned it around. I believe I'm sitting at about 72% so far, which is pretty good, but I have had a few cards in a row where I have got 3 out of 5, so I'm hoping to turn it around a little bit, and I think that I should be able to do that with this card, because I do feel like the last few weeks we have had a lot of very low confidence picks for me, especially last week on week number 6. I believe I had 4 low confidence picks, and 3 of them did end up being correctly, and 2 of them ended up being underdogs as well. I believe at one point before the odds flipped, I had 4 underdogs picked on last week's card. Now, I actually don't know what the odds are for this card, as I am recording it on Friday night in New Zealand, which is Thursday night in the US, I believe, and the odds haven't dropped yet. Usually they have dropped by now, but it seems like DraftKings and BetOnline are just a little bit slower this week, and I guess maybe it is just because this is also kind of a tough card. I feel like a couple of the fights are a little bit more obvious than others. I will say a couple of these fights are they're going to be tough, but of course I'll talk about that later on in the video. Of course, I do already have my article out on the WeWantPicks.com website. $10 per month for that premium membership. If you do sign up using my code ARTEM, you do get a 3-day free trial, and with it you get access to everything that is on that WeWantPicks website, and then you can cancel at any time. But if you do continue with the $10 per month membership using my code in the link in the description, you do help out my channel a lot as well. And with all of that being said, I'll now see you guys in my predictions for this card. Kicking off the card, we have a fight at women's strawweight, and honestly, this is probably my lowest confidence pick on the card. So far this season, I don't believe that I have had the best record in picking the women's fights, and this is a close one. I'm not too sure what the odds are, of course, but I do think that they're going to be pretty close. Rose Conceicao is, of course, from Brazil. She is actually a multiple-time national wrestling champion in Brazil, and you can see that in some of her fights. And the reason why I say you can see that in some of her fights is because it seems like very recently she has kind of actually abandoned that wrestling and is now relying on her striking, which isn't bad, but it's not great. She can actually fight from both stances, which is quite interesting. She started her last fight with the championship at LFA in Southpaw, and then fought the rest of it in Orthodox, which is interesting. On the feet, she does bounce around. She moves around a lot with definitely like a Muay Thai inspired style, and she can get very scrappy on the feet, but I would say she does have a couple of flaws in the fact that she does keep her chin pretty high up in the air and doesn't really have the best striking defense. She's taking on Alexia Thainara, who was quite an interesting fighter to me, because although most of her fights have actually finished with her winning by submission, I would actually consider her to be a striker for the most part. In all of the fights that I was able to watch of her, which was a lot of them because you can find them pretty easily on YouTube, she was getting taken down in these fights and then was locking up the submission. So I wouldn't necessarily say that she is really like an offensive grappler, although she has shown that she can get submissions in really any position. I was able to find quite a few of her fights, of course. I did actually watch her fight against Rayanne Amanda, where she did end up winning by submission, but Rayanne Amanda was finding a lot of success on the feet against her. And then as well, I was able to find this 8-second armbar. Her opponent honestly looked like she'd never trained before. She really just walked forward, like standing vertically upright. Alexia Thainara comes forward, dives for a takedown, gets in like, I guess top control, I guess you could call it, when you just dive on someone, and then she turned it into an armbar in 8 seconds. It was one of the fights of all time, really. And then after that, I was able to watch her 2 recent fights, and both of those fights, she really was kind of controlling in the striking, but she was actually taken down quite a few times by this opponent, Taining Souza, and also I believe she was taken down a couple of times by Rayanne Amanda as well. So her takedown defense is decent, but I wouldn't say that it is great. I do think that Alexia Thainara is actually going to be the better striker and the better pure grappler in this matchup, because Conceicao, in the matchups that I have seen where she has been getting takedowns, such as her fight against Mayara Tace was able to kind of throw up submissions and throw up strikes off the bottom, and was able to kick off Rose Conceicao in moments, but Rose Conceicao did really win that fight with her dominant top position. This is really a matchup, in my opinion, which comes down to, is Rose Conceicao going to wrestle? Because if she is going to wrestle, I think she does win this fight. I don't think that Alexia Thainara's takedown defense is great, even though she does have great defensive jiu-jitsu. And I do think that Rose Concheicao's wrestling is very solid. On the feet, though, I do think Thainara is a little bit better. She isn't the best striker in the world, but she does have pretty decent boxing. She does throw a lot of straight punches, and she does throw them with a pretty decent amount of power. I would give the striking edge to Thainara, and then the pure grappling I would give to Thainara. But I do think that Rose Conceicao has still shown in her career that she can get the takedown and she can control in top control. Yes, it's probably not the most family-friendly style or the style that Dana White's going to jump out of the seat for, but I think that if the fight goes in that direction and Rose Conceicao does go and look to wrestle, I do think that she will be able to win this fight. I don't recommend putting any money on this one because I feel like it could go under if either of them get a submission or something along those lines, and it could go over if Conceicao does control in top position and just kind of controls the fight like that. Now moving up to Kevin Vallejos fighting against Cam Teague. I love this matchup. I think it's going to be fun. I am actually a bit of a fan of Kevin Vallejos, I will be honest with you. He has had very many exciting fights in his career so far, and one of them happened to be a year ago when he was only 21 years old against someone that you probably recognize in Gene Silva. And if you go and watch that fight, Kevin Vallejos wins the first round and looks really good doing it, but then in the second and the third round, a little bit of fatigue started to set in, but also more so Gene Silva just started to land good shots. The way that that fight really took place was Kevin Vallejos was showing very nice boxing on the inside. He was landing very nice counters. Gene Silva wasn't getting hurt by them by any means because Gene Silva's a monster, but Vallejos was landing good shots, and he started his second round pretty good, but then Gene Silva started to land, and he started to land heavy, and that's kind of when the fight did start to change directions, and Gene Silva really took over in the third round and did have Kevin Vallejos hurt pretty badly in the third round. Since then, though, he has actually won a couple of his fights. He was actually able to have a couple of good performances and actually mixed in his grappling in his matchup against Gonzalo Contreras, and also mixed in, of course, his grappling in the fight which he won by submission against Maximiliano Perez. And grappling is something that I do know that he has been working on and does have in the back pocket. But for the most part, I would say that Kevin Vallejos is a boxer, and he does have very nice eyes in the pocket, and I do like that. Cam Teague is a very interesting fighter because he's a big guy for the weight class. He is going to be a lot bigger than Kevin Vallejos because Vallejos is a small featherweight. Even against Gene Silva, Vallejos looked very small for the weight class, but now Silva's thinking about moving to 155. But nonetheless, Teague's a big guy for the weight class and Vallejos is a little bit smaller, so Teague is going to have a bit of a size advantage here. One thing about Cam Teague is that I would say that his biggest weakness is probably his striking defense, but his biggest threat is honestly his cardio and his chin as well. And he really was able to showcase that in his actually most recent fight against Austin Lingo, the former UFC fighter Austin Lingo, who is quite well known for having a lot of first round knockouts on the regional scene. And if you watch that fight, it's kind of an interesting one because Austin Lingo is finding a lot of success on the feet against Cam Teague, but honestly, after Lingo finds a lot of success, he gassed out really badly, and Cam Teague just took over late into the second round and ended up getting a finish over a very gassed out Austin Lingo, who was unleashing the gas tank trying to finish Cam Teague. So we know that Cam Teague is tough, but we know that he can get hit as well. I would say that Cam Teague is mostly a striker. He does use his size very well. He strikes from range. He does throw a lot of kicks, and I would say he does throw a lot more kicks than Kevin Vallejos, who really kind of does only box on the feet. He does have leg kicks himself, but it's not going to be as many kicks as Cam Teague. So the way that this fight kind of breaks down for me is, can Kevin Vallejos close the distance? And when the fight is in close, can Kevin Vallejos land his counters? And the answer to that question is yes, for me. I do think that Kevin Vallejos is going to be able to go out there against Cam Teague, and I do think that he can close the distance here. I do think that he can land his big shots in the inside. I do think that Cam Teague, his striking defense, does leave a little bit to be desired, but he has shown that he can take a lot of damage and still fight through it. I do think that as well, the thing about Vallejos is, I think his cardio is good, But we've seen that Cam Teague can really push a hard pace until the end of the second round, and we probably would have been able to continue that into the third. So maybe something to look at, because of course in the Vallejos versus Gene Silver fight, it was Silver that started to take over in round 2 and 3. But I do think that Vallejos is going to be able to go out there against Cam Teague. And whether or not he finds the finish, I do think that he at least can win the first and the second round. But I am actually going to be picking Kevin Vallejos to win by knockout in round number 2 in this matchup against Cam Teague, who has also accepted this fight on short notice, because this was originally meant to be Vallejos versus Luke Riley, which would have probably been like the best fight of the season, honestly. But Luke Riley, I believe, had visa issues. At least that's kind of what was known to us. So it's kind of interesting to see. Hopefully we can get that matchup at some point, maybe in the UFC. Now we have Francesco Mazzeo versus Kevin Christian. A lot to say about this fight, but also nothing to say about this fight. And I know that makes absolutely no sense, but you've kind of got to view this fight from a little bit of a pessimistic viewpoint. I will be honest, Francesco Mazzeo is on the Contender Series because he accepted a short notice fight against Rafael Sakura, but then the fight against Philip Latu kind of ended up getting changed because Latu ended up fighting against Sterling, and now he fights against Kevin Christian. So originally, he accepted the fight on short notice against someone else, and that's why he's on the Contender Series. The way you've really got to look at this, though, is I think that we're seeing Mazzeo too early into his career, man. Like, this guy is 2-0, really, because if you watch his fight against Joan Aristide, yes, he won the fight, but Joan Aristide was shooting a takedown, got the takedown, but landed awkwardly on his arm and broke his arm. Disgusting injury. That's the fight. You don't need to see it if you don't want to see it. And then against Angus Hewitt was looking decent. Now, yes, Mazzeo was hurting him on the feet. Hewitt had some moments, but Hewitt was taking him down. And then what happened was Angus Hewitt actually took him down. They were up against the cage. I guess Mazzeo had one knee down, but his back was up against the cage. Got kneed pretty badly to the head. Called a disqualification win for Mazzeo. So he's won one fight by DQ, one by injury, and then 2 by KO in 37 seconds and 43 seconds. So what I can tell you about Mazzeo is that he's a very, very athletic guy for the division. He's actually a former middleweight, but he does not look out of place at all at light heavyweight, in my opinion. Very athletic, very fast, pretty technical striker as well. I think that if he just had a little bit more experience, I would be a lot more higher on him, because I don't think that his takedown defense has looked great so far in his career against guys like Angus Hewitt, and even Joan Aristide took him down twice in that 59-second time period. Kevin Christian, Kevin Christian's just another fighter that's really big for 205 pounds. He's fought once since 2019. So he's fought once in 5 years. And you can find a lot of these fights earlier on into his career because he does have a YouTube channel called Kevin Christian. And he's uploaded all of his fights there. But someone's filmed them on a iPhone -2 or something like that. You can see them though. You can find them. You can even see his fight against Daniel Trindade on there, where he did win by triangle armbar because he was in bottom position. He locked up the submission. Kevin Christian, I think, is just a grappler. I don't think he's really got any striking. In his fight against Miguel Porto, his first fight since 2019, in the first exchange of the fight, he literally runs into Miguel Porto, 6'7", light heavyweight, by the way, chin up in the air, nearly looking at the ceiling, and just throwing straight punches from his hips, not even from up here, not even from his chin, not even from his shoulder or anything, from the hips. So he's got no striking, even though he actually won by knee to the body, but you. Yeah, you can watch that fight easily. It's on UFC Fight Pass. He looks good on the ground, though. Kevin Christian's a grappler. Francesco Mazzeo has bad takedown defense. I know this breakdown was a total mess, but this fight is a bit of a mess. You know, if you actually really look through it, Francesco Mazzeo accepted a short notice fight, had 2 different opponent changes, and this is where we are. Yeah, I think Kevin Christian can get the takedowns. I don't think his wrestling is amazing, but he's 6'7" for the weight class. He's going to be bigger than Mazzeo, the former middleweight. And I think it just kind of comes down to, does Kevin Christian want to wrestle? If Kevin Christian strikes with Mazzeo could knock him out in a minute. I really could see that happening. But I think Kevin Christian can get the takedowns. Mazzeo has shown bad takedown defense against Angus Hewitt and Joan Aristide. if Christian gets it down, he's showing very good grappling for the weight class, even though a lot of these fights were pretty old. I think he can get it done. I think he gets it done by submission. Hopefully he hasn't fallen in love with his hands. Very low confidence pick, very low level fight for the Contender Series, all things considered. Now we can move on to like a much better fight, a much more exciting fight in my opinion. Daniel Frunza has accepted a short notice position against Vadym Kutsyi, who also hasn't fought for a couple of years. The last time he won was against the now re-signed to the UFC Ismail Nadeyev, where he wins by knockout in the first round with one punch after losing the whole fight the whole time. Vadym Kutsyi, I would actually say that he's got better grappling than striking, even though you wouldn't really know watching a lot of his fights because he doesn't attempt that many offensive takedowns, which is a bit of a shame. The way that Vadym Kutsyi's fight went against Ismail Nadeyev is Ismail Nadeyev was beating up his legs badly and even dropped Kutsyi as well. Probably about a minute before he finished Ismail Nadeyev, his legs were chewed up, he was dropped, he was hurt, and he was in a bit of trouble. He was shooting desperate takedowns, but then out of nowhere, he gets this massive overhand right knockout, puts out Ismail Nadeyev, and then Nadeyev, all he had to do was win one more fight, and he's in the UFC fighting against Bruno Silva for his second run, which is fun, because he is a very fun fighter. And then prior to that, we're going all the way back now to 2021. We're against Danylo Abdubayev, who was the one attempting takedowns against him. He did just win the fight on the feet by defending takedowns the most time. That's kind of how that fight ended up taking place. And then he did knock out this guy called Flavio Pina. And then aside from that, I was able to watch a couple of other ones. I did watch this Javier Fuentes fight because I wanted to see how his grappling looked. And it looked good. I do like his grappling, and I really like his grappling in this matchup because he is fighting a striker who has shown a lot of grappling weaknesses so far in his career. Both of his losses have come by submission. The first one was in his debut. I can excuse that one, but I can't really excuse the one against Gary Boleto Jr. because Gary Boleto Jr. was like a tiny welterweight compared to him. Like these guys, Gary Boleto is not 5'10". These guys did not look like they were in the same weight class at all when they fought against each other, and Gary Boleto Jr. landed like a big overhand right hand, hurt him, and then Daniel Frunza, as he kind of was dropped and then was getting his way back up onto his feet, just gave up his back, both hands on the floor, Keith Crosby style, and Gary Boleto Jr. just jumped on his back and choked him out. And then you can look at other matchups. He knocked out Jalen Fuller in the first round. That's his best win, in my opinion, to date. But in that matchup, Jalen Fuller was able to take him down, but he did defend most of the takedowns, so I will give him some credit there. And Harris Tulunzik was able to find success in the wrestling against him as well. And the thing that I really didn't like watching that fight was when Daniel Frunza did get taken down and he stood up, he gave up his back, standing up. That's how he lost his fight against Gary Boleto. That's how I think a better grappler could have capitalized and beaten him. And I think in this fight, if we do see Vadym Kutsyi go back to that grappling, which I really hope he does, because I think he's got really good grappling, I think Frunza's going to make the same mistake. Now, Kutsyi, I know he's got decent striking, but he can be sloppy. He doesn't have the most technical striking. He's got good leg kicks himself, but he does kind of not have the best technique. He kind of just has good power and decent fundamentals, but yeah, I do like Kutsyi in this matchup if he grapples. I really like him in this matchup if he grapples because I think that Frunza has a weakness there. So I'm going to go with Vadym Kutsyi by rear naked choke in round number 1 after attempting takedowns, getting takedowns. Daniel Frunza is going to give up his back and Kutsyi is going to capitalize. So I'm picking Vadym Kutsyi by submission in this fight. Now we can move up to the main event. Bailey Schoenfelder fighting against Danylo Voievedkin. Odd fight. Apologies. Very, very odd fight. We have a small heavyweight and Bailey Schoenfelder, who honestly I feel like maybe at some point in his career could actually end up at light heavyweight, taking on Danylo Voievedkin, who has spent his whole career beating up small heavyweights. Very, very odd fight. Let's talk about Danylo because he's quite a funny character in the world of heavyweight MMA. Danylo Voievedkin, I believe he's actually a European karate champion. If you search up his name, that's really what comes up on YouTube. It's everywhere, but you can find a lot of his MMA fights on YouTube. They are quite funny to watch. Now, they're very odd watches. I believe I watched most of them. Most of them were just kind of fun, I guess. If you can see, he beats up everyone in less than a minute. This one here against Dmitry Popov, Dmitry Popov's not 6'1". He's just a really, really big dude, and it looked like he didn't really train that much. Voievedkin goes out there and just absolutely hammers away and knocks him out in 28 seconds. He fought against this guy. It must have been this fight here, the exact same story, except the opponent was shorter and had more of a belly. And then I watched his fight against Yuri Gobenko, and this was an odd fight to watch, because in this one against Yuri Gobenko, he didn't go out there and swing with 125% power. He looked like he was taking it easy on Yuri Gobenko, even attempted multiple takedowns in the fight, which I thought was odd, and let him stand up. This fight, red flag all over it, I'll be honest. I did not like what I saw, and then he won by key lock. But yeah, what I can tell you about Danylo Voievedkin is not a lot. He does have a karate background, but for the most part, he just goes out there in his fights and he absolutely swings away, and he throws with 125% power 125% of the time. Bailey Schoenfelder has fought a much higher level of competition. I do think that there is some worries though for him, because he actually is a striker and he is a small heavyweight. He is a guy which I honestly think actually probably has a higher ceiling at heavyweight, but I could see him fighting at 205 pounds at some point in his career. He's a guy at heavyweight who's in very good shape, as you can kind of see from his photo here. He's a small guy. He's like 225 pounds is what he's weighing in at, and he has beaten somewhat decent competition. Against Baduzaki, he had to defend multiple takedowns, ended up getting the finish there. Greg Velasco, big boy, was on the Contender Series against Shamil Gaziev last year. Once again, same sort of story, had to defend multiple takedowns, ended up getting the finish in that matchup there as well on the feet. I think that from what I've seen, Bailey Schoenfelder is mostly a striker. There's a lot more tape on Bailey Schoenfelder that makes sense to me, so I'm going to go with him. But this is kind of like a scary matchup, because I could just see Danylo Voievedkin going out there and swinging away and either getting caught by Schoenfelder, taken down by Schoenfelder, or even catching Schoenfelder and getting a KO early on in his own right. But I actually am going to go with Schoenfelder. Schoenfelder has shown good defensive wrestling. I think that he can actually kind of turn that around and offensively wrestle against Danylo Voievedkin. I think that's the best path to victory, kind of hoping that that's what he goes with, because I think that Danylo is going to be dangerous on the feet for as long as the fight lasts. This guy, as I did say, is a European champion in karate. You don't see that much at heavyweight. He's got massive power at heavyweight, even though it's just... Watch the fights and you'll know what I mean. Like, it's just not that much to see. I'm going to go with the guy I've seen the tape of. I'm going to go with the guy that I'm pretty confident is more well-rounded as well. I'm going to go with Schoenfelder. I think he actually is going to go out there and wrestle. That's kind of what I'm assuming is going to happen, or hoping. And I think that there is going to be a big difference on the ground. I don't think Voievedkin has a ground game from what I've seen anyway. So give me Schoenfelder. Give me Schoenfelder by KO, maybe submission in round 1 or round 2. Let me know what you think on my predictions on that one there. Decided this time, no script. The script has not helped me at all the last few weeks. In the past, I've been writing my notes. I've been writing a script. Decided to just one take Friday night this one. Hopefully it worked out a little bit. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And of course, I'll see you guys for the next one, week number 8 as well, which is also looking like a very, very good card.